Chapter 24. Dr. Seward's phonograph, spoken by Van Helsing. This to Jonathan Harker. You are to stay with your dear Madam Mina. We shall go to make our search, if I can call it so, for it is not search, but knowing, and we seek confirmation only. But do stay and take care of her today. This is your best and most holiest office. This today, nothing we can find him here. Let me tell you that so that you will know that we already know, as I have already told you, he, our enemy, has gone away. He has gone back to his castle in Transylvania. I know it so well, as if a great hands of fire wrote this on the wall. He have prepared for this in some way, and the last earthen box it was ready to ship somewheres. For this he took the money, for this he be hurry at the last, lest we catch him before the sun go down. It was his last hope, save for when he might hide in the tomb, that he think our poor Miss Lucy, being as he thought like him, keep open to him. But there was not time. When that fail, he makes straight for his last resource, his last earthwork. I might say I did wish double intante. He is clever, oh so clever. He knows that his game here was finished, and so he decided to go back home. He finds ship going by that route he came, and he go in it. We go off now to find that ship and whither bound. When we have discovered that, we will come back and tell you all. Then we will comfort you and poor dear Madam Mina with new hope, for there will be hope when you think it over, that all is not lost. This very creature hitherto, he take hundreds of years to get so far as London, and yet in one day, when we know of the disposal of him, we drive out. He is finite, though he is powerful to do much harm and suffers, and not as much as we, but we are strong, each in our purpose, and we are much stronger together. Take heart afresh, dear husband of Madam Mina. This battle is but begun, and in the end we shall win. So sure as God sits on high to watch over his children, there will be much of comfort till we return. Van Helsing. Jonathan Harker's Journal. October 4th. When I read Mina Van Helsing's message to the phonograph, the poor girl brightened up considerably. Already the certainty that the Count is out of the country has given her comfort, and comfort is strength for her. For my own part, now that his horrible danger is not face to face with us, it almost seems impossible to believe in it. Even my own terrible experiences in Castle Dracula seem like a long-forgotten dream. Here in the crisp autumn air and the bright sunlight. Alas! How can I disbelieve? In the midst of that my thought, my eye fell from the red scar of my poor darling's white forehead. While that lasts, there can be no disbelief, and afterwards the very memory of it shall keep faith crystal clear. Mina and I fear to be idle, so we have been all over the diaries again and again. Somehow, although the reality seems greater each time, the pain and the fear seem less. There is something of guided purpose manifesting throughout, which is something of a comfort. Mina says that perhaps we are the instruments of ultimate good. It may be. I shall try to think as she does. We have never spoken to each other yet of the future. It is better to wait until we see the professor and the others after their investigations. The day is running by more quickly than I had ever thought a day could ever run for me again. It is now 3 o'clock. Mina Harker's Journal. 5th October, 5 p.m. Our meeting for report. Present. Professor Van Helsing, Lord Glaudeming, Dr. Seward, Mr. Quincy Morris, Jonathan Harker, and Mina Harker. Dr. Van Helsing described what steps were taken during the day to discover on what boat and whither bound Count Dracula made his escape. As I knew that he wanted to get back to Transylvania, I feel sure that he must go by the Danube mouth, or by somewhere in the Black Sea, since by that way he came. It was a dreary blank was before us. Omni Gilnuis pro magnifico. And so, with heavy hearts, we start to find what ships leave for the Black Sea last night. he was in sailing ship, since Miss Madamina tell of sails that bring up was before us. These are not as important as in to go in your lists of the shipping of the times, and so we go. By suggestion of Lord Gladstone, by your lords, there is a note of all ships that sail, however small. There we find that not only one Black Sea-bound ship go out with the tide, but the she is the Tsarina Catherine, and she sail from Doolittle's Wharf in Varna, and there's on the other ports up to the Danube. So, I says, this is the ship whereon is the Count. So off to the Doolittle Wharfs, and we finds a man at the office of wood so small that the man look bigger than the office. From him we inquire the goings of the Tsarina Katerina. He swear much, and his face red and loud of voice, but he good fellow all the same. And when Quincy gave him something from his pocket, which crattled as he rolled it up, and put it in so small a bag as he have hidden deep in his clothing, he still better fellow and humble servant to us. He come with us, and asked many men, who are rough and hot, these be better fellows too, since they were no more thirsty. They say of blood and bloom, and of others, of course I comprehends not, though I guess what they mean. But nevertheless, they tell us things on which we want to know. They make it known to us, amongst them, how last afternoon, around 5 o'clock, comes a man so hurry. Tall man, thin and pale, with high nose and teeth so white and eyes that seem to be burning. That he be in all black, except that he had a hat of straw, which suits him not, him all the time. Then he scattered his money in making quick inquiry as to which ship for the Black Sea, and they pay well. Some took him to the office and to the ship. There he will not go aboard, but halt at shore, ends of gangplank, and asked that captain to come to him. The captain come, and when told he would pay very well, and though he swear at much the first he agreed to term, then the thin man go and tell him where horse and car can be hired. He goes there, and soon he come again, himself driving cart, for which a great box. This himself he lift down, though it takes several to put it on truck for the ship. He give great talk to captain about how and where the box is to be placed, but the captain like it not, and swear to him in many tongues, and tell him if he like where he came from, and see where it will be. He but say no, but he had not come yet, for he had much to do. Whereupon the captain tell him that he better be quick with blood, that for his ship will leave the place of bloods before the tide turn wheat blood. Then the thin man smile, and say of course he will go he think fit, but he will be surprised if he can go quite so soon. The captain swear again, folligot, and then the thin man make him bow and thank him, and say that he will so far intrude on the kindness as to come aboard before the sailing. Final the captain, more red than ever, and in many tongues tell him he does not want no Frenchman, with bloom upon them, and with also blood in his ship, with blood answer. Also, after asking where there might be close at hand a ship that might be purchased for ship forms, he departed. No one knows where he went, or blooming, well care, as they say, for they had something else to think of. Velvet blood again, for it soon became apparent that all on the Tsarina Catherine would not sail as expected. A thin mist began to creep up from the river, and it grew and grew, till soon a dense fog enveloped the ship and all around her. The captain saw Polygot, very Polygot with bloom and blood, but he could do nothing. The water rose and rose, and he began to fear he would lose the sight altogether. He was in no friendly mood when at full tide the thin man came up the gangplank again and asked where his box would be stored. Then the captain replied that he wished that he and his box, old and with much bloom and blood, were in hell. But the thin man did not be offended, and went down with the mate, and saw where it was placed, and came up and stood a while on the deck in the fog. He must have come off by himself, for none noticed him. Then they thought of him not, for soon the fog begins to melt away, and all was clear again. My friends of the thirst and the language of the blooming blood laughed, and they told how the captain's swears exceeded his usual polyglot, and then more than ever in full of picturesques. Then on questioning other mariners who were on the movement up and down the river the last hour, he found that few of them had ever seen any fog at all, except where it lay round the wharf. However, the ship went out on the ebb of tide, and was doubtless by morning far down the river mouth. She was by then, where they told us, well out to sea. And so, my dear Madam Mina, it is that we have the rest for a time, for our enemy is on the sea, with the fog at his command, on his way to the Danube mouth. To sail a ship takes time, also never so quick, and when we start we go on land more quick, and we meet him there. Our best hope is to come on him when in the box between sunrise and sunset, for then he can make no struggle, and we may deal with him as we should. There are days for us in which we can make ready our plan. We know all where he will go, for we have seen the owner of the ship, who have shown us the invoices and all the papers that can be. The box they seek is to be landed in Varna, and to be given to an agent, one Ristic, who will be present at his credentials, and so our merchant friend will do all that be done on his part. When he asks if there be anything wrong, for that so he can be telegraphed and make inquiry at Varna, we say no. For what is to be done is not for police or the customs. It must be done by us alone and in our own way. When Dr. Van Helsing had done speaking, I asked him if he was certain that the Count had remained on board the ship. He replied, "We have the best proof, that is, your own evidence. Then in that hypnotic trance this morning." I asked him again if it were really necessary that they should pursue the Count, for, oh, I dread Jonathan leaving me, and now he will surely go if the others went. He answered in growing passion, first quietly, but as he went on, however, he grew more angry and forceful, till in the end we could not but see wherein at least some of that personal dominance which had made him so long a master among men's. Yes, it is necessary, necessary, for your sake in the first, and for the sake of humanity. This monster has done much harm already in the narrow scope where he find himself in the short time where as yet he was the only as a god by body groping his so small measure in darkness, and not knowing. All this I have told the others. You, my dear Madam Mina, will learn in the phonograph of my friend John, or in that of your husband. I have told them how measure of leaving his own barren land, barren of peoples, and coming to a new land where life of man teems, till they are like the multitudes of standing corn, was the work of centuries. Were another of the undead like him tried to do as he had done, perhaps not all centuries of the world who have been, or that will be, could aid him. With this one, all the forces of nature are occult and deep and strong, and must work together in some wondrous way. The very place that has been alive, undead all these centuries, is full of strangeness of the geologic and chemical worlds. There are deep caverns and fissures that reach none weather knowing weather. There have been volcanoes, some of whose openings still send waters to strange properties, and gases that kill or make vivify. Doubtless there is still some magnetic or electric in these combinations of occult forces which worked for physical life in some strange way, and in himself were from the first great quantities. In a hard and warlike time, he was celebrated that he had more an iron nerve, more subtle brain, more braver heart than any man. In him some vital principle has some strange way found their utmost, and as his body kept strong and grow and thrive, so his brain to grow. All of this without that diabolical aid which surely to him, for it has to yield to the powers from which they come, and arm symbolic of good. Now, this is what he is to us. He have infected you. Oh, forgive me, my dear, I must say such, but it is for good that I speak. He infect you in such wise that even if he can do no more, you have only to live in your own old sweet way, and in time death, for which of man's common lot will not be governed over monsters. When God sanctions, he will make you like him. This must not be. We have sworn together that it must not be. Thus are we ministers of God's own wish, for that the old world of men and women's whose very existence would defame him. He has allowed us to redeem one soul already, and we will go out as the old knights of the cross to redeem more. Like them we shall travel towards the sunrise, and like them, if we fall in good cause. He paused, and I said, but will not the Count take his rebuff wisely? Since he has been driven from England, will he not avoid it, as a tiger does avoid the village from which he is hunted? Aha! He said, your smile is of the tiger good for me, and I shall adopt him. You see, your man-eater, as they are of India called the tiger, who has once tasted the blood of human, care no more for any other prey, but prowl incessantly till he get him. This is that why we hunt. From our village is a tiger, too, a man-eater, and he never ceased to prowl. Nay, in himself, he is not the one to retire and stay afar. In his living life, he will go over to the Turkey frontier and attack his enemy on their guard. He be beaten back, but did he stay? No, he come again and again. Looking at his persistence and endurance, with that child brain that was to him, he have long since conceived the idea of coming to a great city. What does he do? He find out the place for all the world most promised to him, and then he deliberately set himself down to prepare for the task. He find in patience just how he is strength and what his powers. He studied new tongues, he learned new social life, new environments of all the ways, the problematic, the law, the finance, the science, the habit of the new land and the new people for which they were coming was he a sense. He glimpsed that we have had with whet his appetite only, and in keen his desire. Nay, it help him but grow as to his brain, for it is all to prove to him how right he was in the first of his surmises. He done all this alone, all alone, from a ruined tomb in a forgotten land. But what's more, may he not do this when the greater of the world thought is to open to him? He that can smile at death, as we know him, who can flourish in the midst of diseases, can kill off whole peoples. Oh, if such of a one was to come from God, not the devil, with the force of good, he might be in this old world of ours. But we are pledged to set the world free. Our toil must be in silence, and our efforts in secret. For in this enlightened age, when men will believe not in what they see, the doubting of wise men would be his great strength. It would be as once his sheath and armor, and his weapons to destroy us, his enemies, who will willingly put our perils, even over our own souls, for the safety of the one we love, for the good of mankind, and for the honor of God and his glory. After the general discussion, it was determined that for tonight nothing be definitely settled, for we would all sleep on all the facts and try to think out the proper conclusion. Tomorrow, at breakfast, we are to meet again, and after making our conclusions to one another, we should decide that some definite cause of action. I feel a wonderful peace and rest tonight. It's as if some haunting presence was removed from me. Perhaps my surmise was not finished, could not be, for I was caught in the sight of the mirror of the red mark on my forehead, and I knew that I was still unclean. Dr. Seward's Diary, 5th October. We all arose early, and I think the sleep did much for each of us and all of us. When we met at early breakfast, there was more general cheerfulness than any of us had expected to experience again. It was really wonderful how much resilience there is in the human nature. letting any obscure cause, no matter what, be removed in any way, even by death, and we fly back to the first principles of hope and enjoyment. More than once, as we sat around the table, my eyes opened in wonder whether the whole of the past few days had not been a dream. It was only when I caught sight of the red blotch on Mrs. Harker's forehead that I was brought back to reality. Even now, when I am gravely revolving the matter, it is almost impossible to realize that the cause of all our troubles is still existent. Even Mrs. Harker seems to have lost sight of her troubles for whole spells. It is only now and again, when something recalls in her mind, that she thinks of her terrible scar. We are to meet here in my study for half an hour to decide our course of action. I see only one immediate difficulty. I know it by instinct rather than reason. We shall all have to speak of it frankly, and yet I fear, in some mysterious way, poor Mrs. Harker's tongue is tied. I know she forms conclusions of her own. For all that has been, I can only guess how brilliant and true they must be. But she will not and cannot give them utterance. I have mentioned this to Van Helsing, and he and I are to talk it over when we are alone. I suppose it's some of that horrid poison which has gotten into her veins beginning to work. The Count had his own purposes when he gave her what Van Helsing called the vampire's baptism of blood. Well, there may be poison in distills itself, of God of good things. In an age where the existence of Ptolemies is a mystery, we should not have wondered anything at all. One thing I know, that if my instinct is truly regarding Mrs. Harker's silences, then there's a terrible difficulty. An unknown danger in the work lies before us. The same power that compels her silence may compel her speech. I dare not think further, for I know I should in my thoughts dishonor a noble woman. Van Helsing is coming to my study a little before the others. I shall try to open the subject with him. Later, when the professor came in, we talked over the state of things. I could see he still had something on his mind when he wanted to say, and still felt some hesitancy about broaching the subject. After beating around the bush a little, he suddenly said, "Friend John, there is something that you and I must talk of alone, just as the first, at any rate. Later we can take the others into our confidence." He stopped, so I waited. He went on, "Mazamina, our poor dear Mazamina is changing." A cold shiver ran through me to find my worst fears thus endorsed. Van Helsing continued, "With the sad experience of Miss Lucy, we must this time be warned before things go too far. Our task is now in reality more difficult than ever, and this new trouble makes our of every direst importance. I can see the characteristics of the vampire coming in her face. It is now but very slight, but it has been seen, if not the eyes to notice without prejudge. Her teeth are somewhat sharper, and at times her eyes are more hard. But these are not all. There is to her the silence now often. So it was with Miss Lucy. She did not speak, even though she wrote that which she wished to be known later. I fear is this, that if she can be in our hypnotic trance tell us what the Count see and hear, is it not more true that he would have hypnotized her first, and have her drink of her very blood, and make her drink as his, should, if he will, compel her mind to disclose to him that which we know?" I noticed acquiescence, and he went on, "Then, what we must do is to prevent this. We must keep her ignorant of our intent, so she cannot tell her what she is not. This is a painful task, oh, so painful that it breaks me heart to think of it, but it must be. When the day we meet, I must tell her for reasons that will not speak, that she must not be of our counsel, but simply guarded by us." He wiped his forehead, which had broken out into profuse perspirations at the thought of the pain in which he had to inflict upon the poor soul already so tortured. I knew it would be some sort of comfort to him if I told him that I had also come to the same conclusion, for at any rate it would take away the pain of doubt. I told him, and the effect was as I expected. It is now close to the time of our general gathering. Van Helsing has gone away to prepare for the meeting, and his painful part in it. I really must believe his purpose is to be able to pray alone. Later, At the very outset of our meeting, a great personal relief was experienced by both Van Helsing and myself. Mrs. Harker had sent a message by her husband to say that she would not join us at the present, as she thought it would be better we would be free to discuss our movements without her presence to embarrass us. The professor and I looked at each other for an instant, and somehow we both seemed relieved. For my own part, I thought that if Mrs. Harker realized the danger herself, it was much pain as well as a danger averted. Under the circumstances, we agreed with a questioning look and answer, with the finger on a lip, to preserve silence of our suspicions until we had been able to confer alone again. We went at once to our plan of campaign. Van Helsing roughly put the facts before us. The Tsarina Catherine left the Thames yesterday morning. It will take her, at the quickest speed she has ever been made, at least 3 weeks to reach Varna. But we can travel overland to the same place in 3 days, and if we allow for 2 days less for the ship's voyage, owing to such weather influences as we know that the Count can bring severe, and if we allow a whole day and night for any delays that might occur us, then we might have a margin of nearly 2 weeks. Thus, in order to be quite safe, we must leave on the 17th at the latest. Then we shall at any rate be in Varna a day before the ship arrives, and be able to make such preparations as to be necessary. Of course, we shall go armed against evil things, spiritual as well as the physical. Here Quincy Morris added, I understand the Count comes from a wolf country, and it may be that he'll get there before us. I propose we add Winchesters to our armaments. I kind of have a belief in a Winchester when there's any trouble that's that sort of round. You remember, Art, when we had to pack up after the Tubalisk? What we wouldn't have given for a repeater apiece. Goods, said Van Helsing. Winchesters it shall be. Quincy's heads is at level at all times, but most of all, if there is a to be hunt metaphor to dishonor to science, then wolves be the danger of man. In the meantime, we can do nothing here. And I think that Varna is not familiar with any of us. If I not go there more soon. It is as long as we wait here as there. Tonight and tomorrow we can get ready, and then, if all be well, we 4 can set out on a journey. We 4? Harker said interrogatively, looking from one of us to another. Of course, answered the professor quickly. We must take care of your so sweet wife. Harker was silent for a while, and then he said in a hollow voice, Let us talk of that part in the morning. I want to console Mina. I thought it was now that it was the time for Van Helsing to warn him not to disclose any of our plans, but he took no notice. I looked at him significantly and coughed. For an answer, he put his finger to his lips and turned away. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 5th October afternoon. For some time after our meeting this morning, I could not think. The new phases of things leave my mind in a state of wonder which allows no room for active thought. Mina's determination not to take any part in the discussion set me thinking, and as I could not argue the matter with her, I could only guess. As far as ever from a solution now, the way the others received it too puzzled me. The last time we talked about this subject, we agreed that there would be no more concealment of anything against us. Mina is sleeping now, calmly and sweetly, like a little child. Her lips are curved and her face beams with happiness. Thank God there are such moments still for her. Later. How strange it all is. I sat watching Mina's happy sleep, and came as near to being happy myself as I suppose I shall ever be. As the evening drew on, and the earth took its shadows from the sun sinking low, the silence of the room grew more and more solemn to me. All at once Mina opened her eyes, and looked at me tenderly, and said, Jonathan, I want you to promise me something on your word of honor. A promise made to me, but to made holy in God's hearing, and not to be broken as though I should go on my knees and implore you with bitter tears. Quickly, you must make it to me at once. Mina, I said, a promise like that I cannot make at once. I may have no right to make it. But dear one, she said, with such spiritual intensity that her eyes were like pole stars, it is I who wish it, and it is not for myself. You can ask Dr. Van Helsing if I'm not right. If he disagrees with you, do as you will. Nay, more if you will agree later that you absolve from this promise." "I promise," I said, and for a moment she looked supremely happy, though to me all the happiness for her was denied by the red scar on her forehead. She said, "Promise me that you will not tell me anything of the plans formed for the campaign against the Count, not by word or inference or implication, not at any time whilst this remains to me." And she solemnly pointed at the scar. I saw that she was in earnest and solemnly said, "I promise." And as I said that, I felt from that instant a door had been shut between us. Later, midnight. Mina must have been bright and cheerful all evening, so much so that all the rest seemed to take courage, as if infected somewhat by her gaiety. As a result, even I myself felt as if the pall of gloom which weighed down on us was somewhat lifted. We all retired early. Mina is now sleeping like a little child. It is a wonderful thing, for her faculty of sleep remains in her, the midst of this terrible trouble. Thank God for it, for at least she'll be able to forget her care. Perhaps her example may affect me as her gaiety did tonight. I shall try it. Oh, for a dreamless sleep. 6th October, morning. Another surprise. Mina woke me up early, about the same time as yesterday, and asked me to bring Dr. Van Helsing. I thought it was for another occasion of hypnotism, and without question went for the professor. He had evidently expected such a call, for I found him dressed in his room. His door was ajar, so he could hear the opening of the door to our room. He came at once. As he passed into the room, he asked Mina as if the others might come too. "No," she said simply. "It would not be necessary. You can tell them just as well. I must go with you on your journey." Dr. Van Helsing was startled as I. After a moment he paused and asked, "That's why?" "You must take me with you. I am safer with you, and you'll be safer too." "But why, dear Madam Mina? You know that your safety is our solemnest duty. We go into danger to which we are, or may be, more liable than any of us from circumstances the things have been." He paused, embarrassed. As she replied, she raised a finger and pointed to her forehead. "I know. That is why I must go. I can tell you now, whilst the sun is coming up, I may not be able to again. I know that when the Count wills me, I must go. I know that if he tells me to come in secret, I will come by wile, by any device to hoodwink, even Jonathan." God saw the look that she turned to me as she spoke, and if there be indeed a recording angel, that look is noted for her everlasting honor. I could only clasp her hand. I could not speak. My emotion was too great for even the relief of tears. She went on. You men are very brave and strong. You are strong in your numbers, so that you can defy that which would break down the human endurance of one who is guarded alone. Besides, I may be of service, since you can hypnotize me so as to learn which even I myself do not. Van Helsing said gravely, "Madam Mina, you are as always most wise. You shall with us come, and together we shall do that which we will go forth to achieve." When he had spoken, Mina's long spell of silence made me look at her. She had fallen back on her to a pillow asleep. She did not even awake when I pulled up the blinds and let the sunlight flood into the room. Van Helsing motioned for me to come with him quietly. We went to his room, and within a minute Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and Mr. Morris were with us too. He told them what Mina had said and went on, "In the morning we shall leave Savannah. We have now to deal with a new factor, Madam Mina. But her soul is true. It is to her agony to tell us so much that she has done, but it is mostly right, and we are warned in time. There must be no chance lost, and in Varna we must be ready to act the instant the ship arrives." "What shall we do exactly?" asked Mr. Morris laconically. The professor paused before replying. "We shall at the first board that ship. Then, when we have identified the box, we shall place a branch of the wild rose on it. This we will fasten, for when it is there is none can emerge, so that at least says the superstition. And to superstition we must trust at the first. It is man's faith in the early, and it is to have roof and faith still. Then, if we get the opportunity that we seek, when none is near to see, we shall open the box and all will be well. I shall not wait for the opportunity, said Morris. When I see the box, I shall open and destroy that monster. Though there will be 1,000 men looking on it, and if I'm to be wiped out for it the next moment. I grasped his hand instinctively and found it firm as a piece of steel. I think he understood my look. I hope he did. My good boy, said Dr. Van Helsing. Brave boy. Quincy is all man. God bless him for it. My child, believe me, none of us will lag behind or pause for any fear. I do but say that we may do what we must do. But indeed, we cannot say what we shall do. There are many things which will happen, and in ways their ends are so various that until the moment we cannot say. We shall all be armed in all ways, and when the time for the ends has come, our efforts shall not be lack. Now, let us do today all of our affairs in order. Let us all things for which touch on others dear to us, and for who to us depend, be complete. For none of us can tell what or when or how it may be, in the end may be. For me, my own affairs are renegades, and I have nothing else to do. I shall go and make arrangements for the travel, and I shall have all the tickets and so forth for our journey. There was nothing further to be said, and we parted. I shall now settle up all my affairs of earth, and be ready for what may come. Later. It is all done. My will is made and all complete. Mina, if she survive, is my sole heir. If it not be so, then the others who have been so good to us shall be the remainder. It is now dawning on towards the sunset. Mina's unease calls to my attention. I am sure there is something on her mind, for which the time of exact sunset will reveal. These occasions are becoming harrowing times for us all, for each sunrise and sunset opens some new danger, some new pain, which, may God's will be, means a good end. I write all of these things in this diary, since my darling will not hear them now. But if it may, she can see them again. They shall be ready. She is calling to me now.